In this lesson, I'm going to show you 3 Trey Anastasio licks that I think are especially common in his playing and will be really helpful for you to use in any sort of minor pentatonic sense. So all these licks are going to be shown in the key of E minor. I think just it's kind of like the easiest minor pentatonic, the most commonly used. If you want to immediately apply this to a Fish song, for example, Chalk Dust Torture is in E minor, so you can use that. But yeah, it applies to all minor pentatonic scales. So even though we're learning it in the key of E minor, you can shift it to A minor. And as long as you still know the general positioning of all the notes relative to the scale, you can move it wherever you want to. So this is the first lick. So if you're thinking about this E minor pentatonic, that's the box right there. So point your fingers on the 12th fret, right? Now he's sliding in to this pretty common like extension from the pentatonic. I actually have a lesson on Tough Club on that exactly if you're interested. So this box looks like this. If you're coming from the pentatonic, you're going to slide from this note on the 14th fret of the G string up, and then you have this box here. So 15th fret of the B string, 17th fret of the B string, 15th fret of the high E string. Now this next bend is kind of like a pre-bend. So that means that he's coming from the top of the bend and coming down instead of doing the full movement. So he's not doing that, but more like that, right? And then this last little bit here, he's coming from this 17th fret of the high E string that he just bent from, sliding up to the 19th fret, then hitting the 15th fret of the high E string, and landing on the 17th fret of the B string. That note right here is the same as this, and it's a root note. Here's the second one. So again, it's kind of just it's a phrase that, just like the first one, it doesn't need to be super dependent on the chord progression that you're playing over, which is why these are good, right? You can move them, like I said at the beginning, to any scale that you want or any key that you want. But it also, like, you don't really need to be thinking too hard about which chord is coming in next or if what you're playing is agreeing with the current chord being played, because it's just a good minor pentatonic lick. Again, it's setting up in this E minor pentatonic, but this time he's not moving outside into this box. He's just kind of staying right here. So he's starting with this root note right here, which is the 14th fret of the D string. Then I'll play the 12th fret of the G string, then bend up the 14th fret of the G, like that. And I'm just sliding into that root note. And then he does this pretty common like 2-note thing right here, which is, it's very common in blues and in minor pentatonic playing, where you're just playing the 2 notes on the B string and the high E string, and that second one is a root note, like that. Probably heard this a lot. Now, right after he plays this root note, he'll do a bend on the 15th fret of the B string, and then hit the root note again, like that. And then to end it, he's doing a pre-bend on that 14th fret of the G string, hitting the 12th fret of the G string, and the 14th fret of the D string. So, now the good thing about these two is that you don't need to take the entire line and force it into something that you're playing over. You can just take bits and pieces of it. So if you like this, and you don't really like the second half of it, that's fine. You can take this, right? And then make something else off of it. Here's a third line. So kind of similar to the second line in that you're still staying in this like 4-fret shape of the E minor pentatonic, but the phrasing is a little bit different, right? You've got some different bends, the notes are in a different order. So we'll still go through this note for note, but again, it follows the same sort of idea with the first two, where you can kind of apply it to whatever context you want, as long as the chord progression that you're playing over isn't this like crazy jazz progression where you need to be following all of the chord tones with arpeggios, you can play this over, basically any sort of like minor blues that you're playing over. So it starts out with the same sort of 3-note thing that I mentioned in the second lick, where you're bending up the 14th fret of the G string, and then hitting the 12th fret on the B string, and then the 12th fret on the high E, which is the root, right? And then you're actually doing the same sort of pattern. So that, then bending up the 15th fret of the B string, and then hitting that 12th fret of the high E. But then after this, you're doing a very, very quick pull off on the 15th fret to the 12th fret of the B string. And then you're hitting the 14th fret of the G string. Like that. And then you just end it with one more bend. So all of these licks are intended, by the way, to be learned slowly so that you can then get them to be faster. But if you feel like you can't right off the bat play these at the speed that I'm playing them at, then put on a metronome and just like slow it down to, I don't know, like 70 beats per minute or something. And just play them slowly, making sure that you're getting all the notes through, and then you can start to speed it up. Believe it or not, all 3 of these licks actually came from one solo that is less than a minute long. The solo is from Fish's song Gumbo, from a live one, from that live album. And if you think that this was helpful, imagine what an analysis of an entire solo would be like. Those are the types of lessons that you can find in Tough Club. I have dozens of jam analysis lessons where I go through whole solos like this, and I talk about what all the licks mean, where you can use them, what they depend on, and all that. If you want private lessons from me, you can also find that in Tough Club. If you want just the tablature for these solos, you can also find that. So go check it out.